We are so excited. We'll be starting a new course. This is the fourth of a series of courses sponsored by the Philosophy Department of the University of Santo Tomas. Mamaya po ipapaliwanag natin itong course na to. No? Kasama ko po dito na moderator for this whole course is Rochi Matienzo. Ako po si Franz Giuseppe Cortez. Kami po ay
si Rochi Matienzo.
Kami po ay mga guro ng filosofiya ng University of Santo Tomas. At this point, we'll ask our colleagues, Rainier, Gian, and Julia, to give the house rules.
Good morning po sa lahat. Thank you po kay Dr. Franz Cortez and Dr. Rochi Matienzo. Before we start, magpapaliwanag lang po ako ng iilang mga house rules or Zoom etiquette for this session as well as for the succeeding sessions in Ethics in Action. So let me just read this. Firstly, please be reminded that all reading and other learning materials shared with you throughout the duration of this course is shared exclusively to the eligible participants and auditors of Ethics in Action. So please do not reproduce and or share these materials outside the group without the explicit permission of the researcher, in this case, Dr. Franz Cortez, the course facilitator, Dr. Rochi Matienzo, the resource persons, and or the staff. Next, the Zoom credentials are likewise shared only to the eligible and accepted participants and auditors of Ethics in Action. Please do not share or distribute the meeting links and passcodes outside the group without the explicit permission of the researcher, course facilitator, resource persons, and or staff. Thirdly, kindly change your display name to your real name. So para po magawa natin yan, just click on the participants button below, hover your pointer over your name, and you will find there a button with the label rename. So once recognized for the first time, kindly state your name and your institutional affiliation as well. Fourth, please keep your microphones on mute until you are recognized to speak. Fifth, additional questions, comments, and or points of engagement that you wish to raise will be entertained via the chat box. Alternatively, you may likewise use the raise hand function of Zoom. And if you're working in a desktop or laptop, you can just press Alt-Y for Windows and Option Y in Mac. So that's the raise hand function for Zoom, and you will be recognized. So once you are recognized, you're expected to lower your hand as soon as you finish making your question and your comment. Sixth, you are encouraged, but you are not required or compelled to turn on your cameras when you join the meeting, and especially when you are recognized to make your questions and or comments in order to contribute to a more personal feel of this dialogical environment. Number 7, this meeting is being recorded. By agreeing to stay, you consent to be part of this recording. Number 8, for technical concerns, kindly send any of the staff a private message. So that's Ms. Gia Nagbisit, me, Rainier Abengana, and Ms. Julia De Castro. So you may likewise send an email to secretariat@ustphilosophy.org. So thank you very much and welcome everyone to the session. I now give the platform back to Dr. Cortez for the introduction of the course. Salamat po.
Salamat po, Sir Rainier, Sir Franz. Before we proceed, may we just ask, let me formally welcome everyone po, no? May I also request, dun po sa chat box located at the right side, can you just put there po saan kayo located right now, so at least we can also know and acknowledge you. Sino-sino na ba at taga saan itong ating mga kasamahan? Sige po, can you please put there your location? Yan. So we have Romel po from Ilocos Norte. Kumusta kaya ang panahon dyan?
Siguro,
Opo.
Rochi. Pwede siguro ilagay na rin yung institutional affiliation.
Institutional affiliation. Opo. Sige po, if you can put there your institution and the name, just the institution and the location, kasi we have already the names here. Pakat na Yap is from MSU General, okay, Mindanao State U. We also have from, sige, we'll just wait a little.
Ito, marami nang pumapasok ng names.
Yan, tapos
so we have from Dumaguete City.
as far as down south.
Cavite, meron tayong katabi dito, Rochi. We are also from Cavite, by the way. Nasa Cavite po kami ngayon, sa Bacoor.
So I see familiar names, no? Our friends and colleagues also.
Yes.
So Romel is from Ilocos. Aidan, no? Welcome. Valenzuela from Vigan. No? Si Aaron, si Alex is from Pasay.
Nakita ko rin dito, Rochi, si Jim Lester. Mukhang may utang pa ako kay Jim Lester. Di ba, Jim?
Welcome, Jim. Ayan. And we also have Hernan from University Rizal System. Ako po ay tubong Tanay, Rizal. Diyan matatagpuan ang University Rizal System. Si Peter is from Dumaguete City Foundation University. Si Richard is Pasig. Res is from Isabela State University, Northern Luzon. Romel, yan, is from our graduate school, no, in UST. Si Aaron, nandito din. Ito yung kanina. From La Salle, Bacolod City. Welcome po. Our Lady of Fatima, si John Paul, dyan sa Pampanga. Is located in San Miguel, Bulacan. Si Archie is from PUP, no? Saan ka sa Cavite? Archie? Si Ruben? Bacoor lang. Baka nadyan ka lang sa kanto. Dito kami nag-broadcast from Bacoor, no? So we have also John Flor from Caloocan, National University Fairview. Si John Flor. Si Erwin is from University of Southern Mindanao, Cabacan, North Cotabato. Kumusta po kayo dyan? From PUP, si John. Yan. Aidan is from College of St. Benilde. Yan. Kumusta mo kami sa mga kaibigan natin dyan? Si Alex is from Pasay City. Cavite State University, Maine, dyan po sa Indang. Si Christopher is sa pamantasan ng lungsod ng Maynila. And he is right now from Caloocan. Yan, so sino pa ang hindi natin nabanggit? Lester, oo, nandito. Welcome. From PUP, si Gerald. Jerby, from Cagayan de Oro City, University of Science and Technology. Si Joseph Dexter is from University of La Salle, Bacolod City. Si PJ is from, dito lang siya, no? In UST and Lyceum yata ito, no? Tama ba? LPU Manila. Lungsod ng Lyceum. San Mateo Rizal, ito si Joseph Panya from Yati University MD-LSU Graduate School of Philosophy. So magandang umaga po. Welcome po sa ating lahat at sana safe kayo. At pinagdarasal din po natin yung mga nasalanta nating mga kaibigan dyan, mga kasamahan natin, no? Because of the, bukod sa COVID, itong mga nakaraang bagyo. Sana po lahat tayo ay ligtas. Muli, magandang umaga po at welcome po sa ating programa. Sir Franz?
Thank you, Rochi. So maybe we can now formally start. Also for the information of everybody, There are some 32 listed participants, official participants. Tama ba, Gian? We have 32 participants.
Opo, sir.
32. So right now, there are 33 inside this virtual room. And kasama na syempre dito yung mga staff and including us. So we are still waiting for some official participants to come in. Siguro medyo na late lang. Baka na traffic, no? Traffic na rin ang ating signal. Okay, so I am tasked to give a short introduction, a background of the course. So let me start. Muli po magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Franz Giuseppe Cortez. Ako po ay nagtuturo ng filosofiya I belong to the Philosophy Department of the University of Santo Tomas. Muli po, welcome sa ating webinar series. This is entitled, sabi nga po kanina, at alam niyo po because we have a website, this is entitled Ethics in Action. So we are very glad that, and we are also excited that you are with us today in this web fora. Well represented po tayo. Tinignan ko po yung mga nakita rin naman po natin, no, yung mga institutions, well represented po ang mga schools coming from Luzon, the NCR, Visayas, and Mindanao. We are thankful that you respond to our invitation. When I was conceptualizing this, when we were conceptualizing this course, we were thinking about along the usual pattern of, since it's ethics, then we just have to revisit the major ethical theories, and then after, of course, we know the major ethical theories: the ontology, ethics of Kant, virtue ethics, utilitarianism, and so on. And then invite our leading philosophical luminaries to lecture on them. That is the usual pattern. However, we were also asking ourselves, is there another way of discoursing about ethics and the moral life? Meron pa po bang ibang paraan para pag-usapan ng ethics? So, fortunately, I came across a book entitled Global Values 101. Ito po yung pinadala ko rin sa inyo. I just sent some excerpts, some chapters from the book. And the class moderator, who is also the author of the book, Brian Palmer, what he did is he invited some prominent scholars from the United States. I can remember the names of Aaron Feuerstein, Noam Chomsky, from journalism. I think we have Naomi Klein, and so on. But these invited scholars are not simply academicians. They are also united by one common characteristic, that they walk their talk. So I thought that they are practicals. What is a practical? These are intellectuals who practice what they teach, who were able to effectively combine reflective action and active reflection. So I was thinking, siguro pwede rin natin gawin dito sa Pilipinas, yung ganito. No? So that's why we have this course now, Ethics in Action. This is highly inspired by that book, Global Values 101, by Brian Palmer. So we thought of having 5 major themes for this course. Yung nga po nakalagay sa ating website, and you are already informed that there are 5 major themes. First, we have ethics of citizenship. And then next week, we have ethics and business, or basically business ethics, or ethical issues in business. And then third, we have journalism and media ethics. And then after that, we have environmental ethics. And the last one is ethics of public governance. So practically, our resource persons, what we did is we asked our resource persons not to prepare any lecture. Rather, what they would do is to engage with us, to engage with our questions. But how would we formulate our questions? So what we did is we sent to you, what you will do is you will formulate the questions based on your close engagement with the write-ups, or even what you know about our resource persons, because our resource persons are relatively prominent. No? Mga kilala natin sila, kaya alam din natin ang kanilang mga ginagawa, ano ang kanilang contribution sa Philippine society. So, and then our hope is that through this course, this Ethics in Action course, you participants will also reflect on the many possibilities of bringing moral philosophy inside our classrooms and even in our research activities. So muli, welcome po at maraming salamat sa inyong pagdalo, sa inyong pagtugon sa aming paanyaya. Ibabalik ko po ngayon ang ating virtual floor kay Rochi para ipakilala po ang ating unang resource person for this series. Salamat po.
Salamat po, Sir Franz. So let me now introduce our dear speaker. So Dr. Roland G Simbulan is an author, educator, and scholar known for his active advocacy against nuclear power, nuclear weapons, and U.S. military bases in the Philippines. He holds the Centennial Professorial Chair in Development Studies and Public Management at the University of the Philippines, Manila, where he has been teaching since 1981. 1981. Parang 2 years old pa lang po yata ako. He is the author of the basis of our insecurity, a study of the U.S. military bases in the Philippines, published in 1983. A Guide to Nuclear Philippines in 1989. The Continuing Struggle for an Independent Philippine Foreign Policy in 1991. And Forging a Nationalist Foreign Policy back in 2009, among other works. His works have influenced the thinking of many government officials, policymakers, students, scholars, and peace activists. He also served as a senior consultant at the Philippine Senate from 1987 to 1995. Colleagues and friends, buong kagalakan ko po na ipinakikilala sa inyo si Professor Roland Simbulan.
Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Good morning to everyone. I'm very honored to be part of this continuing professional education program of the UST Department of Philosophy, and particularly this program on ethics in citizenship. So I hope that I can contribute in some way to our discussions this morning on this topic that you have asked me to elaborate.
Thank you, Prof. Roland. Muli po maraming salamat sa inyong pagtugon sa aming paanyaya. It is really our great honor and privilege that you are with us today. So maybe we can start now, Rochi, ano? So magsisimula po tayo ng mga tanong. We start with light questions, Rochi.
Opo, bago po tayo dun sa ating balitaktakan at pagbabahabahagi mamaya, no, na malalim-lalim na usapin, siguro po with the indulgence of Professor Roland, medyo ano po muna, no, somehow personal at just to break the ice. Meron po kaming ibang nasulat po dito, no? So ito po. Who do you think influenced you the most among the known or even unknown political thinkers?
Well, among the political thinkers who have influenced me most would probably be Noam Chomsky, Dr. Noam Chomsky. In fact, I have personally met him way back in 1996, no? Because I was then writing a book on U.S. Foreign policy after the Cold War. And since I was on a fellowship in the United States in the summer of 1996, I took the opportunity to make an appointment with him at his MIT office, no, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, for which he obliged. And I had almost 2 hour 2 hour interview with Chomsky. Of course, I had read his most significant writings, no, especially going way back in the 60s. And one of his most influential books was about the role of the intelligentsia, scholars, no, because at that time they were really many scholars in the United States were faced with a kind of challenge because their universities were being used by the U.S. Department of Defense for their projects to try to destroy the Vietnamese resistance, no, in Vietnam, because the Vietnam War was then raging. And Pentagon, U.S. Department of Defense, which had a lot of money, was funding universities, no, to come up with projects that would analyze, gather information about national minorities, and so forth, everything about Vietnamese society, so that they could use that information in support of the U.S. intervention in Vietnam, but against the Vietnamese people. So he wrote, Chomsky wrote this book titled The New Mandarins, no, in which he challenged the scholars, no, in universities, in the academic institutions, to form what he referred to as counter institutions to resist this kind of because he referred to it as a form of intellectual prostitution, where scholars were being tapped for money, no, for funds, no, but for a purpose that he believed was an unjust war. So among the scholars, well, whether foreign and local, probably among the foreign scholars, he's the most influential. No, among the local scholars in the Philippines, and again, I have also had the privilege of interacting with him personally. Is no other than the historian Renato Constantino, Senior. No. Renato Constantino, even from the late 60s, I've been reading his essays and later his history books. And then in the 70s, when I was still an undergraduate student in the university, this was under martial law already, he became one of my professors in a course titled Philippine Nationalism. No? And then later in the 80s, when I became department chair at the UP College of Arts and Sciences in UP Manila, I invited him to be our professorial lecturer in our department. No, so it has long been a long engagement with him and interaction, and I think among the local Filipino scholars, he's the one that has really made an impact on my life.
Thank you, Prof. Roland. What about your father, Dante?
Yeah, he also had, but to tell you the truth, although we had discussions, because I'm talking about especially my student days, no, especially during the years that I was studying in high school and college. Because my dad was the breadwinner, no. So we hardly had any discussions on issues at home, because when he was at home, he was interacting more with us and my mother in terms of about what's happening in the household, no, in our neighborhood, So, and the time was limited because he was, there were we were seven siblings all in all, and my mother was a housewife, and my dad had to leave early in the morning, and then usually because in the 60s when we were in Baguio and he was teaching at the Philippine Military Academy because he's a PMA graduate and was with a corps of professors in the PMA. He was very busy in his work, at the academy, because we were living in Camp Allen in Baguio in the city center, and then he would go to Fort del Pilar, in Luacan, to teach, and he later became the department chair of their Department of Social Sciences at the Philippine Military Academy. So he also had an impact on me, but more in a limited sense, limited sense.
What about, Prof, your interest in foreign policies and foreign relations? Saan po nag-start yung ganong klase ng interest? Why foreign policies and foreign relations?
Yeah. Nag-start ito kasi noong ganito yon, nung martial law kasi, nung ma-declare ang martial law in September 1972, I was already then an undergraduate student, I was freshman in my freshman year when martial law was declared, and a year later, actually, during martial law, I was detained twice, detained twice. I was still a freshman in the University of the Philippines when I was arrested for the first time and detained for 3 months without any charge at all, no formal charges, no hearing. They just accused me of violating the anti-subversion law, RA 1700. That's all. No trial, no formal procedure, etc. And then, so I was released after 3 months, and then so I came back to the university to resume my studies, and then during my senior year, when I was then the managing editor of the Philippine Collegian. This was in 1976, because the Philippine Collegian then was probably the only newspaper that somehow dared to tell the truth what was happening, because all the newspapers that were allowed to operate, Philippine Daily Express, Philippine Journal, Bulletin, Manila Bulletin, they were all just echoing the propaganda of the Marcos dictatorship at that time, so walang crime stories, walang corruption sa nila. And the Philippine Collegian, when it was it resumed publication sometime in 1975, I was on the second year after it resumed publication, and I was the managing editor. And maybe this was January of 1976 when there was a crackdown, a raid on the Philippine Collegian offices in Vinson's Hall in Diliman, which our office was ransacked. And this happened in the evening, on an evening. And while we were at home, many of us were, especially from the editor-in-chief, the Abraham Sarmiento Jr., he was our editor-in-chief. I was the associate editor. we were arrested, no, at home, picked up, no, and this time I was detained for 9 months, no, again without formal charges, without formal procedures in court. We were not allowed to even have lawyers, no. So I was detained in Camp Crame and later in Fort Bonifacio until I was released. Now, this experience of mine during the time that I was in detention, it made me reflect on a lot of things. No, first that because originally I wanted to take up law, no, become a lawyer, no, and I wanted my undergraduate course to be a pre-law course, no, but martial law changed all that because ano ba yung mga batas noon, no, ng martial law, puro mga presidential decrees ng dictatorship, no, puro mga executive orders na Congress was dissolved, no, during martial law. There was no freedom of speech, no freedom of the press, walang freedom of the press. So it made me it changed my nakita ko siguro mas effective ako kung magiging I'll be an educator, no, kasi otherwise sa law school no we will be memorizing puro mga presidential decrees at executive orders ng dictatorship. Tapos isa pa yung courts, the civilian courts were not functional, no. The Marcos dictatorship had set up military tribunals, no, to for those who had been detained. Now, what made me study especially U.S. Military bases and U.S. military assistance? Well, precisely the situation of martial law, because I was thinking at that time, how does this dictatorship sustain itself? No, because it was relying very much on the military and police to keep itself in power. No, so and then I began to raise the question, sino bang nagsusuporta dito? No, so later, especially in 1979, this was 1979 to 81 when I did my graduate studies in the United States. I decided to focus on the U.S. military assistance to the Marcos dictatorship, no, which was bankrolling the Marcos dictatorship, and that's where I also got to realize that the main reason why the United States was keeping on bankrolling and providing assistance to the Marcos dictatorship despite its violations of people's rights here was because it wanted to keep its bases, no? Because Marcos had assured that he would maintain the presence of the US bases in the Philippines. So that's what led me to look into this issue, especially because I had the opportunity when I was in the US to interview many Pentagon as well as US State Department officials while doing my research, as well as do a lot of archival work in the US Library of Congress, as well as other important libraries in the United States. So I felt that this data, this information that I had, no, and had collected and written about, it would be useful for the Philippines, no, for our struggle here. So when I came back here, I put together some of my essays, writings, and added more using the data that in interviews I had collected. So that's the story behind my first book, no? The Basis of Our Insecurity, a study of the US military bases in the Philippines. This book had had 3 editions. No, the first one came out in 1983, and then second one 85, and the last one was in 1988. No? And I think among my works, as far as I know, according to WorldCat, according to WorldCat.com, it's among my books, it's the most widely distributed, especially I think almost 300 libraries all over the world, no, have a copy of this book in their library collections, no. So, and I'm just happy to note that it was a very important material for even for our policymakers later, no, later for our senators when they decided to not to ratify the new basis treaty in 1991, no, that was submitted to them. And I'm also happy to note that it was very useful, especially to our people's movement now here in the Philippines, in raising their awareness about U.S. military presence in the Philippines. By the way, I know of 2 generals, no? Actually they're now retired, 2 generals who are PMA graduates, who told me, because I came one time, there were some social occasions, but they told me personally that they first read my book in the library of the Philippine Military Academy, the basis of our insecurity. They first read that book, particular book, in the library of the PMA. You know? So that's the story behind that. So that's how my interest regarding U.S. military involvement, assistance to not just the Philippines, but even Asian governments, as well as military bases and presence. No? And later that evolved into also the issue of how our country relates with other countries, no, in its foreign policy, including the US, China, as well as other countries of the world. No? So that's how my interest in this topic began.
Okay, thank you, Professor Roland. We go now to some questions that directly address ethics of citizenship. The first question, actually the first 2 questions are very straightforward, and it's coming from Rochi. Kanino galing yung first 2 questions natin?
Kay Aaron Tolosa, kay Dr. Aaron Tolosa ng University of La Salle, Bacolod City.
Okay, sige Rochi, you may ask the question.
Sige, ito po. Professor Roland, this has something to do on the ethics of citizenship. Sa una pong katanungan, at salamat po pala Dr. Tolosa for this. What does it mean to be an ethical citizen?
Yes. Well, for me, being an ethical citizen is one who is enlightened and informed so that he can contribute to the improvement of his society, his or her society. Now, one of the most important people whom I really admire, no, is Mahatma Gandhi, no, and who once said that we should be the change that we want to see in the world, no? So that it should start with us, no, the way we behave, no, the way we speak should reflect our vision of what we want our society to be. And also, there is this famous saying by Albert Einstein when he said, "Only a life lived for others is a life worth living." No? So you combine these two, and I think that for me is what an ethical citizen is. Now, but let me emphasize that it's so easy to say this in words. No, it's so easy to say that this is being ethical or you are an ethical citizen. But pag sa tunay na sitwasyon na, no, and you are faced with this challenge, for me, yung talagang test nagaganap doon sa panahon na kailangan mo talagang ipakita na meron kang moral courage. No? Moral courage to stand for the truth, to speak out the truth, no? And face the consequences, no, of your position, no? Kasi hindi madaling sabihin na ethical ka, because the problem sometimes with this concept of ethical citizen, because we live in different societies, no, in the world, no, and our societies have certain rules and laws, no. Now, paano nung sitwasyon, halimbawa nila Hitler, Adolf Hitler, no? There were many good citizens of Germany, no, who supported him, no, and who as leader followed his ways of thinking, no, and because they had redesigned the laws of Germany at that time. So yung concept ng good citizenship nung panahon na yon, no, was in support of Nazi Germany. No, now where does the idea of conscience and moral courage come in? Di ba? Kasi pag nakikita mo but of course, to be frank, meron ding mga Germans naman na nag-resist. No, but they were a minority. No, they were a minority, especially the ones who were already being persecuted, the Jews, the socialists, no, who forged underground resistance movements against tyranny. Pero marami sa mga Germans noon, karamihan, who supported the Third Reich, no, considered themselves very good citizens of the republic, the Third Reich, no. So that's why yung kuminsan madalas yung rules ng lipunan, yung existing orthodoxy, even if they are institutionalized as laws and rules, it does not mean that they are moral. It does not mean that they are right or just, no. That's why I raised this issue about moral courage, no. Gusto ko ring banggitin ang example ni Emilio Jacinto, one of our national heroes. And I'm using him as an example because he was once a UST student of your College of Law when he decided to drop out, no, at the age of 19 to join the Katipunan, the secret society of the Katipunan, which at that time was considered a subversive, a dangerous organization, no, by the colonial milieu in which he was in, no. And si Emilio Jacinto, who was then still, as I said, 19 years old, later was to become the pangkahalatang pinuno, no, of the Katipunan, no, Secretary General, and later he edited the Kalayaan, no, the underground newspaper of the Katipunan Revolutionary Society, and he said also to be the author of a document called Gabay para sa Tamang Asal at Pag-uugali, no, which is more popularly known as Kartilya, no, of the Katipunan. Now, these people people like Emilio Jacinto, I think, although he challenged, no, challenged the idea of good citizenship under the colonial rule, no, di ba? Kasi he's been studying law to be part of the legal system of that colonial system, but later he had the moral courage because he saw in his conscience that hindi tama ito, hindi hindi tama yung the effect of this on his countrymen was not right, no. So he had to do something, no. He had to do something, and that is why I think it's very important that we add as an important dimension of ethical citizen, one who has moral courage, no. You know, here in Quezon City, there is a place here called Bantayog ng mga Bayani Memorial Center, where there is a wall of remembrance which has the names of the martyrs and heroes who died fighting the Marcos dictatorship during its darkest years. And I would say that these young people, many of them were young, some students, some young professionals, no. For them during their time, no, it was not anymore a debate or choice, no, in what they were to do. For them, they simply had to do what had to be done, and that was to resist a dictatorship and tyranny in any and all ways that was possible, no question about it. Ganun ang ano nila. So para sa akin, yan ang mga highest examples of what we are referring to as ethical citizen, no. Ako mismo, I had that personal experience, no, that many of them had. And I would like to say that it is not easy when you are faced with that situation. Kasi alam mo, may consequences yan sa iyong choice, sa iyong decision na gagawin, no? May consequence for which you must be ready, no, to suffer, no. Well, I would not like to use the name of Jesus Christ here, but in the same way as many those martyred, no, for a cause that they fought for, no, based on their conscience, no. So yeah, that would be my reply to that first question about what it means to be an ethical citizen, both reflecting on about other people and reflecting also on my own experience.
Thank you, Professor Roland. Yung pangalawa siguro, unahin natin something which is related to education and to your idol, Professor Renato Constantino. So maybe we can ask Ruben Balotol, are you here? Maybe you can personally address Professor Roland with regard to your question, which is related to your reading of of the text of Professor Simbulan regarding Renato Constantino. So are you here with us, Ruben?
Yes, sir. I'm here, sir.
Yan, okay. Thank you, Ruben. You address Professor Roland para may participation ng ating mga kasama dito.
Okay. Sir, based on your writing about your interpretation with
Ruben,
Ruben,
your audio. Ruben, your audio.
medyo parang mahina.
Mahina. Lapit ka
Hello.
ng konti sa mic.
Yan.
Lapit ka ng konti sa microphone.
Okay. Sir, basahin ko. Actually, I'm also been reading some of Constantino's work, particularly sa Past Revisited and then the continuing past. And then I was also inspired about how he would interpret the history and then say na totoo talaga yung mga points ni Constantino. And then later on, nabasa ko rin sa yung work. My question is it correct to label or to interpret Constantino's partisan scholarship, as mentioned, as a method to fight cultural colonialism, which according to him grounded on a high sense of academic responsibility and deep commitment to certain ethical standards?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the concept of partisan scholarship that Renato Constantino used, no, and discussed in many of his writings in order to fight cultural, what he called cultural domination and colonialism, no, really pertains to the point of view, no, especially in writing history, because after we were colonized, our colonizers, first of course the Spaniards and later the Americans, in their textbooks, when they wrote about the Philippines, it was from their point of view, from their vantage point of view, no. So everything for them was fine, no. It was fine to dominate, take over, exploit another country, supposedly in the name of educating us, no, because they portrayed us as uncivilized, no, unfit for governance of any kind, no. So point of view nila yon, no. That's why itong sinasabing challenge ni Renato Constantino na partisan scholarship, actually this is very much similar to the framework used by the American historian Howard Zinn, no, Howard Zinn, which looked at history, American history, from the point of view of the victims, no, namely the American Indians, those who were taken as slaves and made work in the plantations in the United States, from the point of view of the rank and file American workers and also immigrants, no. So ganun din itong perspective ni Renato Constantino regarding partisan scholarship when he challenged Filipino scholars, especially historians, to look at our own history, no, from our own point of view, no, where our people and society was subjugated and colonized, no. Now, of course, according to him, this does not mean that you engage in untruthfulness, no. That's why he also said that this partisan scholarship must be grounded on a high sense of academic responsibility. Kaya nga inanyo yan. That means talagang tsaka yung in a deep commitment to certain ethical standards, no? Because para sa kanya, truth is not it's on our side, because if the voice of the victims is brought out, no, and articulated, no, we are actually engaging in bringing out the truth of what happened to our society, no, and we are bringing it out and sharing this because this is what really happened. We were victims, no. It was the colonizers who benefited from our exploitation, but not us, no. Na-develop yung society nila at the expense of our underdevelopment here in this country, no. So that's why, because of the exploitation and oppression by Spain, for example, among our countrymen, kahit na divided tayo in islands, no, and we were also divided among ethnic groups in the Philippines. Eventually, this oppression, colonial oppression, brought about by a colonizer, brought us together to fight, no, to struggle against this colonial oppression. Kaya nga, the Philippines was the first country in Asia to wage its first successful national revolution, no? National revolution against a European power, no? Kaya nga yung ano natin, yung 1896 revolution inspired many Asian countries, including the Chinese people, no? Including the Chinese people, to fight against the European colonizers, because Asia at that time was subdivided among European powers, no? Parang sinubdivide tayong lahat dito, no? Yung Vietnam was under the French, no? Indonesia was was colonized by the Dutch, no? Yung British, kinolonize nila India, Malaysia, and what is now Singapore. So pinaghati-hati tayo talaga, no? Yung anong ganon. So because for Constantino, culture and history is a very powerful weapon of subjugation, but it is also a powerful weapon of liberation, no? If it is written from the point of view of those who have been victimized, no? So yung framework niya basically similar sila sa framework ni actually they're actually friends, no? Howard Zinn, I know, and because do you know that Dr. Howard Zinn has been to the Philippines, and he was a house guest during his stay here. He stayed with the Constantino family, no? Pati si Noam Chomsky, no? So they share the same framework of writing history from the point of view of the victimized, no? Because for a long time, our history books under Spain, under the Americans, were from the point of view of the colonizers. Halimbawa, itong isa nating recognized ngayon na freedom fighter, si Macario Sakay, during almost 6 decades, no, of the 20th century, in the history books of our nation, he was treated like a bandit, no, a criminal who was eventually arrested and executed in Muntinlupa as a common criminal for banditry. Pero actually, ano siya? No, nung inano nila Constantino and Agoncillo yung about him, he was actually a freedom fighter who continued the struggle for our independence even after the capture of Aguinaldo, even after the surrender of General Miguel Malvar, he continued the struggle, no? But itong mga those in power, no, the American colonial authorities, no, especially after they created the Philippine Constabulary, demonized Sakay, no, as a common criminal and bandit, as a rapist, as an arsonist, etc. No, so you see, kaya nga kailangan talaga, according to Constantino, we should look. It is the task of our historians to look at our history, no, from the vantage view of our nation and its people, not from the point of view of the colonizer.
Thank you, sir. So,
Thank you.
so
Thank you, Ruben. Maybe we can also address another topic under the subheading education, Professor Roland. This is regarding academic freedom. There is a long question, and I think si Christopher Bandojo really read your article titled "The Meaning of Academic Freedom." So he had a close reading of your article, "The Meaning of Academic Freedom," and he's here. Christopher, are you here with us? Can you address Professor Roland your question? This is rather long, but yes, you provided a context for the question, and then you have the question here: how can we expect academic freedom to flourish along with this context? Christopher, yan, okay, thank you. Christopher, sandali lang ha, nakamute ka pa, nakamute ka. Can you turn your audio on?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Sir Franz. Okay. Good morning, Sir Roland.
Morning.
Okay. Yes, sir. This is about your article about the meaning of academic freedom, because I am struck by your statement that academic freedom must be anchored on the tenure of the professors, the teachers. And I have come across this particular policy of the Civil Service Commission regarding the SPMS, which, for my interpretation, actually assault this very concept of tenure, because in this, I think this is applicable, Sir Franz, dun sa mga public school teachers natin, tsaka sa mga public employees. Kasi sabi doon ay kapag nakakuha ka ng poor or unsatisfactory rating, you can be expelled from the agency or the institution. So in this context, yung question ko, how can we expect academic freedom to flourish in this situation kung yung mismong government ay parang nakaka-invento ng paraan to tigilan yan, sir?
Yes, okay. Let me first tell you that broadly speaking, yung concept ng tenure kasi, the concept of tenure is to recognize your performance that you have already done. Because, for example, in the case of the University of the Philippines, you cannot gain tenure if you have not satisfactorily been rated well in your evaluations, peer evaluations, as well as student evaluations. At the same time, kailangan meron kang publications in peer-reviewed international journals or national journals. So merong standards yan before tenure is given. So by the time you reach that level of accomplishing these kinds of minimum standards and you gain tenure, it is expected that one has really reached a certain level of responsibility as an academic, no? Because you cannot gain tenure in the first place if you have not accomplished certain basic levels of standards. But it does not mean that you will not anymore be evaluated, no, for the rest of your term as an educator. I think it is important that these evaluations continue to keep on upgrading the standards and to also be up to date with what's happening in our pedagogy. Now, tenure in general in the civil service, as well as in many, for example, government agencies, is also to provide some kind of protection. But it's not the only idea or concept found in what we refer to as academic freedom. Now, tenure in general is to allow you to exercise freedom to speak out critically and analytically based on your research and findings, without fear that you might be, without fear that certain powers that be within your institution or outside might retaliate against you, no? Para baga sa ano yan yung for example, all our judges, kasi sa judges natin ba Supreme Court as well as local courts, yung retirement age nila is 70, no? Yun ang ano nila, no? And so that if they are appointed by a particular president, they are not supposed to be beholden to the appointing power because meron silang tenure up to the time that they retire, up to 70, no? And in a sense, sa academe din, the tenureship allows a certain kind of space and for the mentor, no, so that he or she can freely engage in critical thinking, writing, debating, no, without fear, no, of just because these educators are exercising this particular form of freedom, that something will happen to them, no. By the way, the exercise of academic freedom in the Philippines is protected by Article 14 of the 1987 Constitution of the Philippines, no, which states, and I quote, "Academic freedom shall be enjoyed in all institutions of higher learning," no, quote unquote, no. So now, itong academic freedom in relation to tenure has many aspects. Hindi lang yung, well, tenure is one, as I mentioned, no, to protect the, but it also means to be able to continuously engage in innovations, renovations, experimentation, in the discourse, no, as part of our function as mentors and academics. In fact, I look at universities and our academic institutions as one big debating club, one big debating club, no, because it's a laboratory for where new ideas should be welcomed and even encouraged to challenge old or orthodox ideas. Kasi ganyan talaga umuunlad ang bansa eh. Kaya nagkakaroon tayo ng bagong technologies, bagong ways of thinking, no, that are up to date. It's because of this critical thinking. Now, that's why if we look at some of the best universities in history and in the world, dyan talaga yung kung saan yung academic freedom in its full essence is encouraged, no? And here kasama hindi lang yung mentors but even the students, no, are involved, no, in this debating club, no? Kaya nga ako natutuwa ako pag I become very happy when my students, although they are my students, engage me in a debate, no? And sometimes, because based on what they have read or come across, nakakaiba sa sinasabi ko, they debate with me, no, on these matters. Tapos lalo pa silang na-challenge magbasa at magipalala to keep on studying about this issue. And I'm very happy when the conversation spills out of the classroom, no? Minsan sa cafeteria, no, nakaupo ka at lalapit ka ng estudyanteng nakipagdebate sa iyo at gusto niyang ituloy yung conversation sa iyo. Yan, tuwan-tuwa ako doon. Tapos so I remember a student who throughout the semester, at ito estudyanteng ito, that's why I never forgot him. Well-read siya talaga, well-read. No? And he used to really debate with me during the class. No? Talagang, pero sabi, pag mag-debate naman siya sa akin, when he challenges my views, talagang he tries to back it up, no, with what he has read and probably I have not read. No? So that student, binigyan ko ng highest mark, no? Binigyan ko ng 1, flat 1. Kesa yung ibang estudyante na agree sa akin, pero nung tinatanong ko sila sa exam or sa discussions, hindi nila ma-back up yung kanilang pag-agree sa akin. You see? Mas magaling pa itong isa na nagdi-disagree, pero yung kanyang meron siyang talagang substantiation ng kanyang sinasabi. So that's my idea of academic freedom. And from the point of view of professors, no, no? Although let me remind everybody that nothing is absolute. Nothing is absolute. But I would rather na open mo yan, tapos tayo magde-decide up to sa limits natin, kesa naman maglagay na tayo ng barriers or limits to that freedom, no? Because it's dangerous if you put limits na sabihin mo, you cannot criticize the officials, no? You cannot criticize our leaders, no? Hanggang dito lang kayo. Hindi, no? So yung barriers, of course, kasama na din yung walang nagmumura, no? No cursing, no. You have to also know how to listen to the other side, no, while they're speaking. Hindi yung sasabayan mo katulad ng nakita natin sa debate nila President Trump at Biden. Hindi pa nga tapos yung isa. Hindi nakikinig yung kabila, sigawan sila, no? Hindi ganon, no? So meron ding yung freedom na expression na yan. But we know up to where it is. No, I think we can discern up to where that freedom is. Now, going back a little bit to the earlier discussion, no, which we started, no, yung about the yung citizen, natin, no, yung moral citizen natin. Yan yung pagkakaroon ng moral courage. Kasi if you know this is the truth based on your findings, we should not hide this truth, no? even if there are consequences. And I think doon nakikita talaga doon natetest talaga yung tunay na ethical citizen, no? Isa pang halimbawa ng ethical citizen na ito, ina-idolize ko rin ito more para sa millennials kasi millennial mismo siya. Si Ed Snowden, no? You know Ed Snowden, who is the most wanted man by the FBI and the United States. He used to be the most promising IT person of the CIA and NSA. He had a very promising career until nakonsensya siya kasi yung sinasabi ng American leaders opposite sa nakikita niya nakikita niyang mga documents and videos, no? Kasi sila, nasa NSA siya, National Security Agency, which was monitoring what was happening all over the world. Tsaka he also became a CIA analyst, no, IT. Expertise niya kasi sa cyber warfare and cyberspace. But because he felt that this had to be parang niloloko yung American people at malaking kasalanan ang ginagawa sa mundo ng kanyang mismong gobyerno, he decided to release this, no, to the public, no. And now his consequence niya, now he's in exile in Russia and is the most wanted man in the United States. Now, yung ganyang moral courage at kuminsan kailangan no? We need this kind of moral courage in the world today, especially when we are faced with a system that pretends to be ethical and moral pero hypocritical talaga, no? Kasi yung sinasabi ng mga leader ng gobyerno kabaligtaran sa nagaganap talagang nakikita niya, no? So pwede nating i-tie up yung discussion kanina dito sa ng academic freedom because many mentors and scientists sometimes yung findings nila run counter to what the official establishment says, no? And perhaps like Galileo who challenged the ideas of Copernicus, no? Pero based sa kanyang scientific findings and calculations, tayo ang umiikot, no, sa sun, not the other way around. Kasi dati for 1,500 years ang lumaganap na na belief, no, ng church at saka ng mundo na tayo ang center ng universe at lahat umiikot sa atin, no? But he challenged that because that was really based on his scientific findings, no? That's why he was he was imprisoned, no? Si Galileo.
Salamat po, Prof.
Thank you, Christopher. Sir Rochi, maybe we can ask Pevi. Pevi, are you here?
Yes, Sir Franz. Yes. Professor Simbulan, dadako naman po tayo sa issue ng grupo ng mga indigenous people po. May we call on po si Ma'am Feby? Is Ma'am Feby around to address the question personally to our speaker? Ma'am Feby? Sige po, maybe baka nakakaproblema si Ma'am Feby. Babasahin ko na lang po, Professor.
Yes.
Pinadala po ni Ma'am Feby is, si Ma'am Feby po ay from Columban College. Ito po. So, how do indigenous people could really stop the mining industries? Are there really concrete plans of the government to care for these indigenous people and have these lands to be sacred again? Meron po siyang explanation. In Zambales, there are mining industries. I think it was shut, but the effects are very terrible. Ayan, based on the article entitled, ayun na. Sige po.
Yeah. Well, uh, indigenous peoples in any country, no, they are oftentimes also referred to as national minorities. No? Minorities. Every country has a minority, no, minority group, and for me, the true test of a democratic society is not when we abide mechanically by the rule of the majority, no, or what most of the people say, but when we respect and hear the voices of the minority. Kasi ang problema, especially in problema, and this has been a very painful experience, especially in Europe, where minorities there, especially ethnic minorities, no, racial ethnic minorities, they were considered obstacles to progress and therefore had to be eliminated. Di ba? Ganun ang pag-iisip kahit from itong mga fascists, no? Sila Nazis, Adolf Hitler. That's why these people, especially the Jews, para sa kanila had to be eradicated from existence, no? And this has also happened in the former Yugoslavia, no, where minority groups in certain parts of Yugoslavia, there was an intentional program of the government there to really eliminate them, no, to really wipe them out the face of the earth, no. Now, kahit na minority yan, no, in any society, as I said, dyan natetest yung democracy. We should hear their voices and respect them, no, because particularly in our country, no, kaya naging national minority itong tinatawag nating indigenous peoples is because they successfully resisted colonial rule in our country, no? Hindi kagayan tayo, unfortunately, sad to say, no, yung mga nasa lowlands na sinakop ng mga Kastila and later ng mga Americans, yung ating mga ninuno, and then we were converted, etc. We accepted the subjugation of colonial rule, no? Pero itong mga kababayan nating ninunong ito na ninuno at ngayon descendants nila itong mga IPs na tinatawag, their ancestors never allowed themselves to be subjugated by colonial powers, whether the Americans, whether the Spaniards, Americans, etc. Kaya nga sila, marami sa kanila natulak sa kabundukan eh. Sabi nga ni the late historian, actually American historian, but who lived in the Philippines, si Dr. William Henry Scott, no? He's a specialist on the Cordillera peoples and other national minorities in the Philippines. Para sa kanya, based sa kanyang archaeological findings, many of these indigenous peoples in the Philippines today who live in the mountains, no, in mountainous areas, used to live in the lowlands. But because they continued to resist colonial rule, eventually they were pushed to their mountain sanctuaries. No? Ginawa nilang parang fortress yung mga kabundukan para ma-preserve, no, yung way of life. That's why the reason why I'm mentioning this is because we should be proud. Kahit na mas konti sila sa atin, itong mga tinatawag nating indigenous peoples, we should they are in fact our national treasures, no? We should respect them, we should listen to them and give honor to them, no, because they are living national treasures that we have today, no. And as I said, kailangan talagang respetuhin natin sila, because if any country, for that matter, any country who disrespects or disregards its minorities, hindi democratic yan. No? Any country which disregards or oppresses even its minorities, kahit na sasabihin natin, sasabihin nila, democracy, ano naman yan, majority rule. Sabi ko nga minsan, one time I was giving an example in my class about this issue about respecting minorities, no, the respect that we should give to minorities in our society. Sabi ko kasi yung klasiko, karamihan ng klasiko, marami sa mga klase namin, minority yung males. The males are always a minority. Karamihan girls, no, female students. Sabi ko, what if the majority of you, the females, decide, no, as an exercise of democracy and the rule of the majority, that throughout the semester, hindi natin papasalitain, bawal magsalita o mag-recite itong mga male students dito. Oh, that's majority rule. Di ba? The rule of the majority, exercise, mechanical exercise. Tama ba 'yon? No? Eh, sabi nila, no. Siyempre, di ba? No? That is precisely what I mean, no? And lalo na itong mga national minorities natin or indigenous peoples, ano sila, no? They are living national treasures in our society, no? Kaya nga wag lang natin silang gamitin pag kailangan nating sumayaw-sayaw sila during our festivals, no? Yung mga indigenous dances, ganon, with their costume. Hindi. Dapat talaga sila, yung bigyan ng importance yung kanilang yung kanilang way of life, because if come to think of it, their way of life that they have preserved was brings us to our pre-colonial past, no, during the time before we were dominated or subjugated by the Europeans. Now, also, no, for me, that's why I want to give importance to the IPs, and I mentioned this in this article that was published by Peace Review. Our indigenous peoples are actually the best guardians of our environment. No? Why? Because of their worldview. Alam nyo, yung karamihan sa mga indigenous peoples natin, no, the Lumads, no, and the people in the Cordillera, many of them are animists, no, what they call animists, and they worship our ancestors, no, their ancestors. Now, how are their ancestors worshipped? They're worshipped by their respect and protection of nature. Kasi yung ancestors kasi nila nalibing diyan sa lupa, no? Sa lupa, no? And that's why for them this soil, no, and the plants, trees that it has to be protected, because if it's true nature, no, through that provides them with food, no, provides them with sustenance. That's why they have to protect it, para may maging sustainable yung yan, no, yung pagkain na yan, no. Now once these rivers, these trees are destroyed, no, para na ring sinira mo yung kanilang ng ancestors nila, no, because that spirit of their ancestors live there, no. That's why they are the best protectors, no, itong IPs natin. They are the best protectors of our environment, no. Of course, some of them, especially in the Cordillera, they engage in a limited way. They engage in what we call small-scale mining. Some of them, no. Pero itong small-scale mining naman, limited. Hindi naman katulad pag pumasok yung corporations, no, mining companies na malalaki. where they would shave off entire mountains, no? Or poison, in effect, poisoning our rivers, no? Now, I think the question that was posed or asked also deals with how can indigenous peoples help really stop these mining industries. Alone, the indigenous peoples cannot do it because they are a minority in society today. No? Only with the support of non-indigenous people sector, yung iba-ibang sectors in society, other Filipinos who form the majority, can the large mining industries be stopped, no? So kailangan nila ng suporta dito sa ano nila, no? Actually, para sila sigurong they're like the remaining American Indian tribes who were pushed and pushed, no, from one reservation to another, and eventually kahit na dun sa reservation na yon, tinatanggal sila, pinapalipat because development projects have to be set up, etc. So that's why alam nyo, sa state of Nevada, one time during my visit there when I was studying in the United States, nakakaawa yung ibang American Indian tribes because they were relocated to an area, no, which is highly contaminated by storages of nuclear waste, no? Sa Nevada kasi may lugar doon na yung storage ng nuclear waste of from American nuclear power plants, doon nila nilalagay, no, underground. Pero because of that, the soil and earth there has been heavily contaminated throughout the past decades. And yung mga maraming Indians doon, American Indian, nagkakasakit, no? Yung may mga unusual sickness sila, and some public health studies have linked this to the contamination coming from the nuclear waste that has been dumped in the soil near the reservations where they have been made to live, no? By the way, itong partner or vice president ni Biden, no, Kamala Harris, no, half ano siya, no, half American Indian, no, half from Jamaica yata yung ano niya, yung father niya, no. Anyway, so IPs alone cannot do this kasi maliit sila, tapos weak yung ano nila, no, yung resources nila. And that's why it's very important for other sectors to provide support for their struggle to stop the destruction of their ancestral lands in the remaining mountains where they now live, no? And I think it's also important that the non-IP sectors who form the majority assist the IP sectors so that they will be more knowledgeable about their rights under the Indigenous People Rights Act, as well as under the Constitution, no? So that para hindi sila maloko, no? And actually, it's a pity that yung schools that some religious organizations in Mindanao helped set up, no, yung mga lumad schools, for example, so that in far-flung areas, in mountainous areas in many parts of Mindanao, maganda sana ito itong mga sinet up na lumad schools kasi malalayo at hindi kasi ano sila. So it's been able to educate and inform many lumads about their rights, no? But unfortunately, they are being red tagged. They're being red tagged, unfortunately. No, the supporters non-IP support, as well as the indigenous peoples who are resisting corporate mining and the destruction of the ancestral mounds, ancestral lands. They're being red tagged so that to make way for this corporate mining and other government projects. So it's really very unfortunate.
Salamat po, Professor Roland. Sir Franz, for the next question po.
Yes, Rochi. Professor Roland, we go to some questions regarding foreign relations. There is a question coming from this is from Ruben again, but this is a specific question regarding understanding China and its interest in Southeast Asia. So we call again Ruben for your interesting question regarding our relationship with China.
Okay, thank you. Napahan ko lang yung question. It was mentioned there in your article that we should not only know about China.
Ruben, mahina. We cannot hear you.
Okay.
You.
Oh. Yan po. It was mentioned there in the article na we should not only know about China, but we should learn with our current relationship with China and the image of China internationally, with some conflicts with India, with US, and other territorial disputes. So do you think this kind of advice is still tenable, still applicable?
Yeah, the article that you're referring to was actually originally my speech, no, before the Philippine Marine Corps, no, during their 36th anniversary in 2013, and my position about regard and recommendation about this has not changed, no, because whether we like it or not, no, China is a neighbor, a nearby neighbor. It is also today the second most powerful country in the world. And according to the former chief of the World Bank economic team, in fact, China since 2014 has already overtaken the United States as the global economic power. No, so because of this, we have to relate, no, with China, despite our contentious relationship with it in certain territorial disputes, no. And I mentioned from the article that you're referring to, we should not just learn from China, no, but we should also learn from our neighbors, no, who have dealt with China, no, neighbors like Vietnam, no, who has a common border with China, and in fact, meron din kasama din siya sa disputes with China, and yet they have engaged with China to their advantage, to the advantage of the Vietnamese, no. Despite this relationship in the South China Sea, China is the largest trading partner of Vietnam, no, and it's also the largest source of tourists in Vietnam, and soon they plan to have a railway system from Nanning Nanning, the city of Nanning in China, southern China, down to Ho Chi Minh City. So kahit may disagreements, tapos nakadikit pa yung Vietnam sa China, no? In terms of land border, and they have had armed conflicts before between the two countries. But despite this, the relationship, where it can prosper, prospers, no, and develops, no, and it has its own dynamism, no. We can also learn from the way the Chinese. I think because in that speech I mentioned, because of our closeness and interaction with China geographically, we can learn a lot from it, no? Especially how it managed to develop from a very, very poor, backward. See, remember, they have the largest population in the world. From a very, very poor and backward country to become now where they are, no? Soon number one economically. How they managed to, in a matter of 3 decades from the 80s, they managed to uplift almost 700 million Chinese people from mass poverty to middle class status. No, even the IMF, actually 5 years ago, I read a report of the International Monetary Fund, which said that the 3 decades of China, from the 80s, 90s, and 2000, in a matter of 3 decades, they practically have the best case study of the most successful anti-poverty program in the world, no? Where they uplifted so many Chinese people from poverty. So I think we need China economically. No, let me tell you this. We need China economically, and at the same time, because of our still limitations in our capability, we also need the United States partly for our security. But of course, we can interact. The more we interact with other countries, even non-US, we can also bolster our security by improving our capability, especially our external defense capability. And I'm happy to note that recently we have actually been improving our external defense capability. We have been buying, we just recently bought 2 Corvette, these are brand new Corvette warships from South Korea. We bought also 20 fighter planes for our Air Force from South Korea. And we are also trying to buy some Apache and Viper helicopters for our Air Force from the United States, no? All to bolster our capacity as a way of protecting our sovereignty. Because I believe that any honest to goodness country that claims to be sovereign, no, needs to be able to protect itself from intruders, no, or from those who threaten our sovereignty, whether we're referring to the United States, no, or referring to China or any other power that that may take advantage of our sovereign rights in our country. So my position here is still the same, and I think parts of what I've been saying actually, not all, but some of the things I've been advising in that article are actually being implemented by the Duterte administration in its in the way it has redesigned our foreign policy vis-a-vis China and Russia. No? Because before, our foreign relations was almost totally in economic terms as well as military terms, was totally dependent on the United States. And I think this limits our capacity to grow and modernize.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Ruben, for that question. The next question is coming from Najipa Makaraya. Sir, we were not able to send this to you because it just came in today, but this is a straightforward question from Najipa. Looking back the historic Senate vote, and I think Professor Roland, you're also very aware of what happened during the time, that historic Senate vote of 1992 ba? Prof. Roland? Or
1991, September 16.
So looking back to that historic Senate vote, do you think Filipinos of today are more critical in choosing leaders? This is a provocative question, Prof. Roland. So
yeah, I don't know if that question, how that question wants me to tie the Senate decision with the way we elect leaders, no? Because if we are talking of the election of the leaders, the senators who made that vote in 1991, I think in the post-war, post-EDSA People Power Revolution period, some of the best minds among our leaders were in that batch of senators. No, some of the best leaders in public service that we have had were elected in 1987. No, in the Senate, that was the Senate that decided finally on the basis treaty, because they were independent-minded. No, they stood up for what they believed in. Alam nyo ba na the majority of that batch of senators, no, kasama dyan si Senate President Jovito Salonga, the late Senator Aquilino Nene Pimentel, no, nandiyan din. Of course, si Senator Bobby Tañada, Wigberto Bobby Tañada, Sagisag, no, nandiyan sila. Actually, many of the 24 senators, pati si Mang Lapus, by the way, no, Raul Mangla, dito sa batch na na-elect na they were some of the best and courageous leaders that our country had during that generation. At lalo na nung martial law, I'm saying they also exercised and practiced moral courage. Nung martial law, many of them became political detainees themselves for standing up, no, against the tyranny of the Marcos dictatorship. And later, many of them even became lawyers to help defend political prisoners in the military tribunals that were actually itong military tribunals noon parang kangaroo courts no, because they were staffed, yung judges doon lahat mga sundalong mga officers, no. Marami sa kanila wala namang background sa law, but they were made to decide on cases of supposedly sedition and rebellion, no. Pero these were the courageous leaders ng batch na ito who were later elected, no. Ano sila? They stood up for the Filipino people during martial law, no. And I think when they were elected as part of the euphoria, no, after martial law, no. Tapos but at the same time they also exercised high principles. Kasi why? Kasi nung election 1987, no, for the Senate, the majority of them, if not except 2 senators, ang hindi lang ano doon, ang hindi lang in-endorse ni Cory Aquino, si Erap Estrada at saka si Juan Ponce Enrile, no? The rest, lahat yan nasa ticket, nasa ano ni Cory Aquino, no? They were endorsed. Pero nung 1991, when the time came at nag-decide si Cory Aquino, kasi nung unang policy niya, to keep her options open on the issue of the US bases. Ganun ang ano niya dati. Until in 1990, the year before the expiration of the expiration of the USRP Military Assistance Agreement, in 1990 nag-go signal si Cory Aquino to negotiate with the United States a new treaty, no? So that after the expiration in 1991, yun sanang treaty na yun ang papalit, no? Treaty of Renewal, US bases renewal. Now, itong mga senators natin at that time, as I said, they exercised high principles and independence. Kasi nung nag-decide na si Cory, and Cory was trying to convince them to ratify and approve a new bases treaty, they stood their ground. No? They stood their ground. No? Eh ngayon, sinisingil sila ni Cory kasi Cory had, di ba, very popular si Cory at that time. No? Still popular, hindi lang sa Pilipinas pero internationally. After the euphoria of the EDSA revolution, tapos siya yung new president. Nung naniningil si Cory sa kanila, a few of them did vacillate. No? A few of them, but the majority, no, led by the late Senator Jovito Salonga, who was the Senate President then, no, stood their ground, no, and with their numbers, actually 12. That's why we call them the Magnificent 12, no, the Magic 12. Although only eight senators were needed to reject the treaty para ma-prevent yung 2/3 concurrence under the Constitution. But they stood the ground, the 12, despite all the lobbying that President Cory Aquino did personally on each one of them. You see? Tapos yung pressure din sa kanila, no, na i-approve yung treaty, no? You know why they disapproved the treaty, no? Military bases treaty at that time? Because number one, legally, it was unconstitutional, no, to have bases here. Because in 1987, when we ratified the new constitution prohibits nuclear weapons in any part of Philippine territory. And these US bases here were known to transit as well as to store tactical nuclear weapons of the United States, no? In fact, na-confirm ito sa mga na-declassified na documents from NGOs and scientists in the US, no? Na talagang they were storing nuclear weapons. Tapos ang policy ng US government to neither confirm nor deny that they are keeping nuclear weapons here. No, that was their response when they were asked. So, violation ng ating constitution, no? It was the US bases which had nuclear weapons were in violation of the 1987 Constitution. Secondly, yung argument ng US government at saka ng pro-bases people noon, no, pro-bases advocates at that time was that the bases here are they're here to protect us, no, to protect our democratic way of life, no, our political democracy here. Pero alam ng mga senador from their personal experience, yung senators noon, na during martial law, almost the 14 years of martial law, the United States government in fact supported, no, bankrolled, no, the Marcos dictatorship, and the military assistance, training, logistics given to the Philippine government by the US allowed Marcos to expand the armed forces, no? From when martial law was declared, mga ano lang yung armed forces of the Philippines, mga 90,000 eh. No, by the last year of the Marcos administration, halos 250,000 na yung ano, no? Yung armed forces of the Philippines, no? So the military aid, despite the fact that the dictatorship dismantled democracy in the Philippines, sinuportahan ng US yan. So ngayon, anong argument nila na sasabihin na we are here, our bases are here to protect your democracy? And what were you doing? What were they doing when our democratic system and its political institutions was dismantled under a dictatorship? No, walang freedom of the press, walang Congress was padlocked, no, walang freedom of speech, and so forth, no. So another argument na ano din na demolish, no, yung economic ano daw, dahil they were saying co-collapse, our economy will collapse if you pull out the bases, no. Well, all of these doomsday scenarios turned out to be wrong, no, because for example, after the bases were pulled out, batay dito sa statistics ng Subic Bay Metropolitan Authority and also the Clark Development Corporation in what used to be Clark, the workforce, no, in the former bases which had been converted for commercial and economic uses, the workforce had only after 10 years nag-multiply by four times the employment, no. Ngayon kasing natap yung economic potential ng baselands, no. Dati kasi purely military ano lang usage, no, yung loob ng ano. And if you go to Olongapo, no, city or Clark or Angeles City where Clark is located, naging ghost town ba 'yon, no? Sinasabi nila magiging ghost town 'yan, no? Hindi. No? In fact, ang nabawasan siguro diyan ang mga bars, no? And cocktail lounges, nabawasan. Although hindi totally nawala. Kasi dati almost the entire base cities, itong base towns na ito, were really used for rest and recreation of the U.S. armed forces, no, of the United States, no, when they docked here or yung base personnel, no, American base personnel, which at that time was off limits to Filipinos, no. Now we are able to enjoy these former bases, no, itong facilities dyan sa Subic, sa Clark, sa Camp John Hay in Baguio, yung dating Wallace Air Station sa Poro Point, La Union, no. These have now been converted for economic and productive uses, and they are now in the control and possession of the Philippines, no. So I would say that at that time the Filipino people elected some of our best leaders, no, especially in the Senate, no, national leaders who had principles, who had proven themselves to be with principles and with moral courage at the time when that was needed. And I think that was also our best contribution to the end of the Cold War, no? Kasi yung Cold War between the former Soviet Union and the United States was being dismantled, no? Yung Cold War, which ended in the early 90s, and our best contribution to that globally was the dismantling of these US war machines, no, in our territory. And kasi nung panahon na nandyan, pati yung ating foreign and security relations was affected. Why? Because the United States was engaged in conflicts and wars against countries that have diplomatic relations with our country, with the Philippines, no? For example, with Iran and Iraq, no? Ginagamit ng US dito yung forces nila para bombahin o kaya atakehin yung ano ng Iran and Iraq, no? Even though we had very good diplomatic relations with these countries. So I think now our people need I think to be constantly be aware and informed, no, about what's happening in our planet, because this also affects us, no? Kasi lalo na with the internet, no, that's our advantage today, no, the internet. And itong social media has also allowed us to come closer to what is happening in every part of the world and interact even with other people. So to the extent that we have come to realize that what happens there in other countries will affect us. For example, the US elections, no? Because the US is still the largest superpower in the world. Anything that happens, no, there, including changes in its presidents and leadership, will somehow affect us also. So we should not ignore what is happening, no, in other countries, especially the countries that play a significant part in our lives, no. I think there are about how many, mga the last count, mga 4.3 million Filipino immigrants, no, in the United States, no, most of whom have become US citizens, but they still regularly interact with their families here in the Philippines.
Thank you, Professor Roland. We go to another question, and it's related to public governance. Rochi.
Professor, what is the essence of real local participatory governance? May follow-up din po, no? How will technology transform the landscape of participatory governance and democracy in the country? Ang mga katanungan po ay galing kay Sir Richard ng Pamantasan Lungsod ng Pasig at kay Willie Ford, Capiz State University, Pontevera Campus.
Yes. For me, the real essence of local participatory governance is the presence and existence of strong grassroots and movements and NGOs in our communities. No, because it is through this grassroots people's organizations and NGOs that people can be involved, no, directly as well as indirectly with governance, no. Now, many of our grassroots social movements today interact a lot with our LGUs, no, local government units, for the reason that many projects of the local governments need citizen participation, no, and the NGOs as well as people's organizations become the consultative mechanisms of LGUs in order to know the needs, no, of the people, no, directly or indirectly, no. So real local participatory governance needs, no, a very vital as well as active grassroots movements, no? And I'm happy to note that in many parts of our country, this has been happening. No? There is a strong bond and partnership between many grassroots movements among farmers, fishermen, women, indigenous peoples, no, who have partnered closely with the local government units in their area. Now, one of my best cases and examples of grassroots participation, as well as a model for governance, no, has always been Naga City, especially when the mayor there was the late Mayor Jesse Robredo. You know, he's the husband of our vice president today. No? Jesse Robredo was mayor of Naga City for almost 20 years. No? Well, actually, a little bit more than 20 years until he was appointed DILG secretary. No? But he transformed, actually, this can be seen, the way he transformed the LGU. He transformed it into a model LGU, and it caught the attention of not just the local agencies here in the government, no, in the government as well as universities, the academe, but also internationally, no. It even was awarded given many awards by the United Nations. Now, how did they tap, no, and involve the people, especially grassroots organizations? Well, first of all, what they did was that in all the LGU committees, no, in all the LGU committees, official committees of Naga City, binigyan niya ng ano, no, they asked the grassroots, the mainstream grassroots organizations in Naga City to appoint representatives to all the LGU committees of the city, no, so that the NGOs and will be represented, no, so that they can articulate the needs of the people, no, in these committees. So lahat, no. Plus, secondly, using technology, no, especially the internet, all contracts, no, lahat ng ano yung kontratang mga projects that were being implemented, no, including the budget, yung approved budget for Naga City, nakaano sa internet nila, no? Nandyan yung pumasok yung perang available and how much was being spent and where, and pati yung mga ano ng mga halimbawa yung mga projects nila binabanggit pa to the even the minute detail of how much they're spending for the cement and you know, even the items such as the materials, construction materials, no, very itemized for people to see how their money was being spent, no. So that's why itong Naga City nung time na yon, talagang it was the most awarded LGU in the country, no, but both locally and internationally. Tapos anong mayor pa si ano noon, mayor pa si Jesse Robredo, he was even a given awarded the Magsaysay Award, no, for local governance, no, because of this. Now, one thing that at that time, ito na-notice ko talaga during my several visits to Naga City, unlike some cities or municipalities na yung isang makikita mo kaagad sa ano nila once you enter the city, yung mga large scale projects, no, No, parang minsan pati yung municipal hall napakalaki, parang mansion, no? Napakalaking building o kaya ano. Doon sa Naga City, you would hardly see a highly visible and large scale infrastructure, no? Hardly. Bakit? Kasi yung pera ng city based on consultation with the people's organizations from their city councils, pinaprioritize yung pera sa yung needs ng education, no? Needs ng mga clinics, no? That mean a lot for the poor, both urban and rural poor. Doon nila binubuhos yung pera sa basic needs ng tao, hindi sa mga infrastructure. Kasi usually sa mga ibang syudad natin, yung malalaking infrastructure, yung mga malalaking infrastructure niya nung ginagawa, yan yung ginagatasan ng mga politiko, no, for their corrupt practices, no? Ginagatasan nila yan up to 10% to 30%, no, yung nakukuha nila for every project. No, tapos lalagay pa nila they would even place their billboard with their faces. No, sa Naga City pinagbawal 'yon nung time na 'yon, ha. Walang pinagbawal ni Kwan na nilalagay yung mukha, no, sa mga projects kung meron mang projects na medyo ng local government, no. So this is why it became, despite the absence of this large gargantuan infrastructure. Actually, I remember I'm mentioning this because nung pumutok remember the Maguindanao massacre involving the Ampatuan family, ay yung mga munisipyo nila dyan, munisipyo at saka yung provincial capital dyan sa Maguindanao, para mga palasyo, no? Tapos ang lalaki ng mga tulay, no? You would notice this, ang lalaki ng mga infrastructure, and yet the people there were so poor, no? Dapang-dapa sa doon sa lugar nila. Kasi itong mga projects na ito, gustong-gusto ng mga politiko, dahil yan ang nila, no? Diyan ang source of corrupt practices, no? So kung yung technology magagamit effectively for transparency, talagang papakita yung ginagastos ng nanalong contractor, no? Kung sa yan, everything can be checked, no? So that the people who contributed money through their taxes will know, no? Kaya nga usually people, if they're really consulted, yung talagang basic needs nila sa araw-araw, no? Nasasabi nila, and doon natin ibubuhos sana where it matters, no? Yung pera natin, no? So for me, that case study of Naga City in that period, I think should be a model of best practices. Now, there are also similar models of best practices. No, I would like to say, meron ding mga ilan, no, in some cities, no, in the north, no, in Ifugao, in Bulacan, no, merong mga ganyang similar best practices. But the important thing here is that the social movements, the grassroots social movements, are really consulted, no, and allowed participation. And number two, yung transparency using the technology available to us.
Thank you, Professor Roland. You have mentioned continuously about the case of Naga City. Actually, I think I also mentioned to you when we had a conversation that one of our invited resource persons is VP Lenny Robredo regarding ethics of good governance. Para po sa mga participants, if you open our website, you see there that there are only 4 resource persons because we are reserving the pick for VP Lenny. Pero right now, we still don't have confirmation. So let's just cross our fingers. Hopefully, she can be with us. At this point, Professor Roland, we will flash here the 3 books that have influenced you most. And we'd like you to say something about those 3 books.
Yes. Let me start with the art of war. The art of war. Can we? Yeah, it's on the right side. No. The art of war is actually an ancient classic. No. It's an ancient classic, and it so happens that the author Sun Tzu is a Chinese. Actually, in real life, he was a general and an advisor of one of the emperors in China, almost 2,000 years ago. No, and but you know, this is a classic, ancient classic. In fact, it has inspired many strategists and writers, including businessmen, who, because of the competitive world that we have, use its principles. You see, the title, although it's called the art of war, it's actually a misnomer, no, yung title, no, because the author actually is not encouraging bloodshed, no, in the battlefield, no. He's not encouraging violence in the battleship, in the battlefield. The beauty of this work, because Sun Tzu, the Chinese general and philosopher, who became who summed up his experiences and thinking about challenges and conflicts during his time. He looks at the world as a world of conflicts, because that's what he experienced. But the essence of his writing, especially in Sun Tzu, is when he says that the supreme excellence, in warfare is to win a war without having to go to the battlefield. No. In other words, the use of intelligence, and then outwitting the enemy or adversary, so that you win the battle, even without fighting your enemy and engaging in battle, in a battlefield. In fact, it is these same principles which later the strongest emperor in China, who eventually united China as one, used. Yung si Emperor Qin later, ginamit niya ito. Because the idea here of Sun Tzu is that although our world is, that's something a given, it's full of conflicts, but if we want to get things done, instead of fighting one another, engaging in perpetual warfare, revenge, and in unending wars and conflicts that China during its earlier years, before it became a nation, experienced, it's important for him that if you can outwit your adversary and even win him over, or even if you already defeat that adversary, give him space to retreat, or to escape, so that you can still negotiate with him, dahil natalo na yan kasi kung mas matapang daw na kalaban yung talagang hindi mo bibigyan ng route to escape, kasi desperate talaga, bibigyan very yung kanyang and his ideas, actually Sun Tzu's idea, combines elements of Confucianism as well as yung practical battlefield experience. As I said, he was a general of an army of one of the emperors in China when it was still in conflict. But mabuti naman na naisulat niya, naitala niya, no? In this Chinese classic, which was later translated into English, no, by General si U.S. General Samuel Griffith, no. Now, among the classics, yan ang paborito ko, yung up to now, no, wala among books that I want to share with you. In the recent times, no, I have been captivated by the writings of Yuval Harari. Yuval Harari is Israeli citizen, no, taga-Israel siya. But he was educated. He finished his PhD in Oxford University in the UK, United Kingdom, and he has become a kind of international intellectual superstar, especially because of his book on the left side, *Sapiens*, no? A Brief History of Humankind. Because in this book, he combines all the knowledge about our past, no, about humankind, no, from the time we became human beings, no, up to the early 20th century, no? And anong message niya dito sa *Sapiens*, no? Actually, ang sinasabi niya dito, kaya tayo because we as part of the living entities in the world, we did not have at first advanced thinking, no? We were weak individually. In fact, sa labanan with animals, if we had remained tribes, small tribes, no, we would have been we would have been erased from existence, kasi yung one-on-one labanan sa mga wild animals. Pero sinasabi niya, what made us survive and become the most superior being in this planet, no, based on how humans evolved, is our ability to imagine, no, and create communities, no, because going beyond our immediate families, dito sa communities na ito, halimbawa, one of the earlier communities that he mentioned that we created, no, and bonded us together, even with people we did not know before, yung religion, no, yung early religions, no, were part of the human imagination created to create a bond, and this bond that created larger communities made people survive, no, because you become stronger, no, in relation to other, to animals, wild animals, etc. You also become creative because when you interact with more people, you're able to invent, no, through combination of competition and cooperation, no. So you invent, no, etc. No, so inaano niya pati yung the concept of a nation from religion, tapos pati yung our imagination of a nation that brought us together. Ito yung mga nag-factor na nag-ano sa atin, no, sa bilang isang community, and eventually that made us superior, no, than other living things, no. So it's actually yung work niya yan, *Sapiens*, it's it's the favorite book. Kasi may endorsement si ano dito sila Obama, no? Former President Obama, Clinton, sina Bill Gates, no? And other scientists, no? Paborito nila ito kasi he really combines. Kaya ano siya, although Harari is a historian by profession, his academic training, but he is able to combine the recent knowledge, no, from the sciences, all disciplines, no, para dito sa kanyang book Sapiens, no, Sapiens. So itong Sapiens about our knowledge about our past, no, what made us what we are today. Yung Homo Deus naman, which followed Sapiens, Homo Deus, no, he now looks at the present, no, yung recent developments and knowledge in the present, and projects what we may become based on this lalo na yung technology, no, and because he mentions that unfortunately when we became masters of the entire planet, no, as sapiens, no, we became the terror, the destroyer of the ecosystem. And dito sa isa pang libro niya, yung Homo Deus, he says that in a sense, technology and biotechnology has made us as some kind of God and creator, no? Yung sinasabi niya kasi ngayon yung technology can even in laboratories, no? We can even now clone, it's possible, no? Life forms, no? Starting with animals, no? And combine pa yan with kung i-combine pa yung biotechnology, where now you can create bionic life, no, using stem cell technology and other applications. Pinoforesee niya yung yung in a way future where combination of biotechnology, AI, where we in the future we are faced with the creation of superhumans, no, through biological engineering, no. And sinasabi niya, if we do not reflect on this, eventually baka yung with the creation of AI, no, baka yung AI na yan which can actually become even more superior than human beings, it's possible for them to dominate the world, no, at tayo ang magiging parang subhuman forms, no. Kung hindi na, kasi technology napakabilis no. The AI, of course, the AI which is created by human beings is talagang nagko-compete ngayon yung China, US, Russia, and some other countries including Japan, no. But it's able now to even outmatch in any kind of game, no, or even a quiz a contest, no, any human being, no. So kung i-combine mo pa yan sa yung lalo na ngayon going, the rate technology is going, this is it's really a frightful scenario yung sinasabi na dito sa Homo Deus, no, from Homo sapiens to Homo Deus, if we do not reflect, no, because yung inaano niya pati yung fast track din yung destruction of the ecosystem that we have begun when we began to adopt modern technology, no, for our needs, to make life convenient for us, no. So especially the fact that lumalaki din ang planet natin. No, lumalaki yung ano niya. Tapos we are where there is no brake or puro fast gear, ika nga sa kotse yung nangyayari. No, so he really makes us reflect on human life and its future. No, so these are I included this in because I'd like to share that these books and I'm encouraging everybody, especially yung last two, no, yung Homo Deus, Sapiens and Homo Deus ni Yuval Harari. Actually, yung YouTube, maraming, if you want to listen to some of his lectures and interviews, no, marami sa YouTube, no, if you want to listen to him about his ideas and philosophy that he has incorporated in these two books.
Okay, thank you, Professor Roland. Actually, there are still so many questions coming from our participants, but of course, due to the limitation of time, I think we have to go to our last question, Rochi, which is, again, we go to the lighter side of things.
Professor Simbulan, the last question will be Trump or Biden?
Yung actually, even before the election, my preference has always has been keen on the candidate of the Democratic Party. No? Kasi yung party system sa Amerika kasi they really have a platform, no, and they have really strong machineries in their states of these two parties, no, the Democratic Party and Republican. And the Democratic Party shares certain principles that I also agree with, no. For example, yung ano sa mga immigrants, no, and then yung more funding for social programs, no, especially for the poor, no. Tapos yung sa foreign relations nila ng Democratic Party under Democratic President, yung emphasis nila on diplomacy, not war, not intimidation, but alliance building and diplomacy, no. On the other hand naman, yung Republican Party, based on its track record, although mind you, I just want to say that one of the most loved presidents, no, in the United States was a Republican, si Abraham Lincoln, no. He was with the Republican. He was the candidate of the Republican Party, the Republican president. But other than that, yung principles that the Republican Party has, no, as a party, I do not share it with them, no. I do not agree with them. Like, they rely on more they think that they should be a global policeman, no, interfering with the internal affairs of other countries. But at the same time, the Republican Party would support even dictatorships, no, even those who violate their people's rights with military assistance. Unlike yung Democratic Party, yung aid nila, military assistance to dictatorships, they are more worried about supporting dictatorships or authoritarian governments, no, yung Democratic Party. Yung Republican Party of Trump, kasi historically they're very, very racist, no. It's a racist. May tendency silang maging anti-immigrant, no, kasi sa ano nila, they blame yung sa economy ng US when there are problems, they blame the immigrants who have come to the US. America is an immigrant country. Yung mga puti na yan, the whites who claim that they want America to be great again. Lahat yan galing sa Europe or Australia, no? Eh yan talagang ang talagang American ano diyan talaga tunay na Americans, yung American Indians, Native American Indians, no? Of which si Kamala Harris, the Vice President of Biden, half Indian siya, half American Indian, Native American Indian, no? Yan yung mga talagang ano diyan, no? Indigenous na tao diyan, no? Na sinakop ng ano, because the United States is really an immigrant nation, no? So why would the whites or the white people claim na sila yung ano lang diyan, no? And its laws, its constitution allow this and encourage. In fact, to tell you the truth, no, the reason why the United States, no, has become a great power, no, since the early 20th century up to especially after the Second World War, is because of the fact that since it is a melting pot of many peoples, of many nations, no, yung ano diyan, yung gene pool, no, global gene pool, democratized diyan, nandiyan halo-halo, and some of the worst people nandiyan sa gene pool. But some of the leading and best people from all over the world nandiyan din, no? And these are the people who have with their intellect together interacting have made the United States a superior nation in terms of technology, especially, no? Tingnan niyo yung ano, maraming mga kahit na ilan compared to the European countries, no? The United States is only about 200 plus years, no? And yet it has produced almost the most number of Nobel Prize winners in the world in the field of science, technology, mathematics, no? At karamihan yan mga immigrants, no? Immigrants who fled Germany during yung families nila. During the Nazi regime, they fled from Russia, etc. No, tapos pati yung mga black slaves, no, whose ancestors were brought there, and itong mga ano kasi talagang kaya yung gene pool nila ano talagang halo-halo. It's really the most multiracial society in the world, no. It's really an immigrant, literally an melting pot of immigrant nations all over the world. Kaya nga nandyan din ang worst from the world na nag-migrate dyan. Nandyan din the best, no? And I think because of it has the best also, this is what has made the United States stand out, no? Yang ano yan, halimbawa sa sports, sa Olympics, no? Kasi nandiyan yung mga pinakamagagaling na ano, no, na athletes, no, who have tennis players who migrated there or who fled their countries, and yan talaga, it's with, so wag dapat magreklamo yung Republicans or si Trump. gusto ko na sabihin ex-president, no. Kasi yung results almost nandun na, no, wala yung kine-claim niyang fraud, wala namang makita, no. So that's why even noon yung before, of course I'm for Biden, no, now in the current race, but even before I've always been for presidents who are with the Democratic Party. By the way, nung martial law sa Pilipinas during the Marcos dictatorship, it was during the time of President Carter, no, when he became president in 78, elected president, no. Democratic Party si Carter kasi si Nixon and si Ford were Republicans before him. Tapos after him Reagan, no. So pero nung panahon niya, when he was the president of the United States for one term, Carter, nung Democratic presidency niya, talagang they started questioning the human rights record of the Philippines, no, under the Marcos dictatorship, no. So officially sinisita yung Pilipinas kasi tapos hino-hold back yung military aid, no, kasi they do not want the Democratic Party does not want the military assistance that they are even selling to other countries, no, to be used, no, to repress that the people there, no, by the government, to be used by the government and its army, no. So hindi lang sa Pilipinas pero yung ibang bansa sa Latin America, they were using military aid, US military aid as a pressure to try to ease the the tension and conflicts in other countries, no. So that's why I may not agree totally with the entire program of the Democratic Party, but in the realm of American politics, sila yung medyo progressive party, no, mainstream party, no. The US political system has, based on their constitution, has only allowed the existence of two parties there in the US, no. Tapos meron nga silang such a unique creature like the Electoral College per state, no. Actually, do you know the background of this, the Electoral College elections nila? Kasi it may be funny, but the framers of their constitution, kasi nasa constitution nila yan lahat yan pati yung Electoral College. Framers of their constitution did not want a president of the United States to be elected directly by the people on that basis alone, yung solely. Kasi baka mangyari popularity vote, no? Popular siya, very popular sa mga tao at may elect. Gusto nila may balance din. Kaya nga dahil the states are also strong, no? And are also given importance. Like in this race today, parang napaka-importante nung magiging resulta dun sa ilang states, di ba? Like Arizona, like Georgia, di ba? Yung para mabigyan ng importance talaga kasi may naka-alat na electoral college votes doon. At in each state kasi, kaya nga imposibleng magka-third party or fourth party na mananalo each state has a very strong machinery, no, political machinery, political party machinery of the Democratic and the Republican Party. Malakas yung machinery niyan. So that kahit na walang election, may sila kasi may programa yan may programa talaga based on the principles that it has, no. They recruit members, no, from the people, and then talagang they spread their influence, no, in their state, no, para malakas yung machinery. Tapos they also engage in political party education of their members and recruits, so that all of this strength of the machinery is tested during elections, no? Kasi para din yung nare-recruit nila, parang may ideology, yung ideology ng party ng Democratic Party or Republican, no? Together, on one hand, yung popularity ng presidente na isang factor, but that could also be overshadowed by the electoral college system, no? Kasi kung mahina yung machinery mo diyan, no? Machinery mo diyan at saka yung kasi na based sa platform na yung machinery, ma-affect din yung yung votes, no? Popular votes that they get to win. Kasi nga yung nila naging sistema winner take all no, for each state allocated with a certain number of electoral votes based on their population, winner take all, no. Kung isa naglalaban diyan kahit na nanalo lang yung isa, no, isa by one vote, makukuha nung nanalo yung all the electoral votes assigned to it. So again, that has been their system, and that is in their constitution, no, and that has always been the way they have elected their presidents since the time of George Washington, after the American Constitution was drafted, no, and approved.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Roland. At this point, we have to end because it's almost 12 o'clock. We formally thank you for sharing your deep knowledge of the events in Philippine politics and also U.S. politics. Of course, also our foreign relations, specifically with the U.S. Thank you for your insights on education, academic freedom, your insights on how to become an ethical citizen, and your direct experiences on, especially your direct experiences on the challenges of how to put words and ideas into action, the challenge of having a moral courage. So at this point, maybe we can ask the participants to open their video so that we can give Professor Roland a virtual clap. If you can open your video. Thank you very much. Ayan. So maraming salamat po, Professor Roland. Wala na siguro tayong, meron ba tayong virtual awarding, Rochi? Okay, sige. So thank you very much. And then at this point, we also call our technical staff led by Rainier to give the important reminders, to announce the important reminders to our participants.
Thank you po, Professor Dr. Roland Simbulan, Dr. Franz Cortez, and Dr. Rochi Matienzo. So I've been tasked to read the reminders for this session. First of all po, participants will be required to submit a thought piece, which is essentially, excuse the typographical error, essentially a reaction, comment, or critique of the thoughts of Professor Dr. Roland Simbulan. So here are the guidelines. 500 to 600 words written in English or Filipino, and the deadline of submission will be on Friday, 13 November 2020. So the link to the submission form will be sent via the email list. Secondly, the next session will be on ethics in business, and this will feature Dr. Marilisa M. Dakanay of the Institute for Social Entrepreneurship in Asia. This session will take place likewise via Zoom on 14 November 2020, Saturday, from 9 o'clock a.m. to 12 o'clock noon. Please be reminded to submit your questions for the next speaker on or before Wednesday, 11 November 2020. And the link to the submission form will be sent via the email list. As with this session, you are also expected to have read the required readings once you join the next session next week. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Rainier. So,
Sir Franz, baka pwedeng ma-request natin ang mga kasamahan to open their videos for our photo op. Para po sa ating documentation po. Teka, so Rainier, can you facilitate?
Yes sir, opo. Saglit lang po.
Okay. Again, maraming salamat po sa lahat. At paumanhin po, hindi namin na-cover yung inyong mga ibang katanungan. Pasensya na po. But we'll try our best kung paunlakan po tayo ni Professor Simbulan. Maybe we can send him the rest of the questions. At kung sakali po sagutin niya, then we will also share po. We will email it to you po the responses. Kung okay lang po kay Professor Roland.
Yes, okay. Okay.
Salamat pong marami. Sir Rainier, bilang ka ha, kasi baka nakapikit pa kami, no?
Okay po.
Pag-picture mo.
Okay po. So, bilang po ako 1, 2, and 3. Isa pa po. 1, 2, and 3. Okay na po. Maraming salamat po.
Okay. Maraming salamat po.